Hi everyone and welcome back. So there's this narrative or reputation, we're just jumping right in by the way because I've got a lot to say on this topic, but there's this narrative and reputation I see in spiritual spaces that trusting the universe, it means having no boundaries. People might not outright say that, but it's just how I see people acting. And that being open and giving is proof of enlightenment, and that surrender means being passive with zero boundaries, you know, just letting people walk all over you. And saying yes and being accessible is somehow more spiritual than saying no in the name of love and light. We know, if you've been on this channel before, that we don't do love and light here. Ultimately it is all love, but we're not the spiritual bypassing group. And because trusting the universe is usually, it's a spiritual term, you know, for the most part. And at the root of spirituality, it's all about self-love. It's all about becoming more of your soul, more of your light. So we naturally think that everything around trusting the universe has to be positive, and that all signs from the universe have to be positive and love and light, or we're doing it wrong. But trusting the universe doesn't mean abandoning discernment and abandoning self to overgive. Trust without discernment isn't spirituality, it is self-abandonment dressed up as being spiritual. And I'm going to do a separate video on, it's going to be a two-part video about the signs that you get from the universe, how to recognize them, how to trust them. But today I want to talk more about energetic boundary violations and how to protect yourself from those and how to set boundaries. So we're going to talk about why it might feel difficult to set boundaries, and at the end I'm going to give you ways that you can start setting boundaries. So, trusting the universe isn't about handing your life over to anyone who uses spiritual language. It's not about outsourcing your authority and giving someone else your power. It's about releasing resistance and realizing that you are co-creating with the universe, with your soul, with God, whichever resonates. People think that they have to completely detach and let go of everything in order to trust the universe. But it's not about letting go, it's about loosening the grip. And it's about releasing resistance and not trying to work out the when and the how and all of that. Knowing that all of that is the universe's job and not yours. And I see a lot of people often step into a place of powerlessness when they trust the universe. And they start feeling like, well, I've got no control anymore. I've had to let go and hand it all over. And they feel like life is now happening to them and that they've got no control and power whatsoever. But that's not the case. And this is what makes them susceptible to energy vampires who violate the fuck out of them because they've got no boundaries. And it's not your fault. You know, I was once there as well, but we're going to change that. So the first way we're going to change that is by recognizing that trusting the universe doesn't just include the light and fluffy stuff that you hear out there. It includes trusting the warnings, trusting the discomfort, trusting the contraction in your body, the sudden heaviness in your chest when someone steps into your energy who shouldn't really have access to you. And the body wisdom that tells you that something isn't sitting right, that's what we want to start to trust as well. Because the universe, it doesn't just send alignment, it sends alarms, in my opinion. And ignoring alarms is not spirituality, again, it's self-abandonment. And the truth is, people on a self-love journey, and those working through their shadow, especially empaths, especially intuitive people, and those going through grief as well, they're very conditioned to make themselves available. And we're just told to be open, you know, we're told to be receptive, we're told to be understanding of everyone else's wounds, everyone else's emotions, everyone else's trauma. And because we're compassionate people, we do, but not everyone who enters your field comes with the intention to respect it. Some come to attach and siphon, and the higher you rise and the more that you evolve and the lighter your energy becomes, the more energy vampires appear because you have something that they want. And instead of doing the work themselves, they want to take it from you. So I want you all to start implementing energetic boundaries. And again, we're going to go into how. But some people come into your life to feel significant and to make themselves feel important and to validate themselves. Some feel like they They want to be connected to something that they've not learned to cultivate within themselves. So they see your light and it threatens their wounds and threatens their shadows, and they want what you have without doing the work. These aren't safe people to have around you, and you also don't deserve to have that shit in your life. You know, you can have compassion for these people without making it your problem. And protecting your energy doesn't mean you mistrust people and close yourself off and isolate yourself or just like contract and harden up. It means you trust yourself. It means you trust yourself so much and you're so connected to your own soul that you know that you will get the warnings you need when you need them, and then you'll listen to them and trust them. You know that your energy is so strong that it's going to just kick anyone out of your field who shouldn't be there. And when you trust yourself fully and know that the universe is fully supporting you, that's when you feel safe to be vulnerable, and you realize that vulnerability isn't a weakness. It doesn't mean you become a yes man to everyone around you, but it means that you don't have to go through life having your guard up. And that's the place I used to live from. You know, if any of you look back to my earlier videos, I was a teeny bit defensive, but you know, vulnerability wasn't safe for me. But vulnerability, like I said, it's not being a yes man. It just means that you trust your intuition so much, you trust your cues, you trust the discomfort, you trust your exhaustion, you trust all of the signs, and you trust the sense that something isn't aligning, and then you're able to walk away and know that you being vulnerable didn't make you weak. And boundaries aren't walls, they're energetic agreements that say, if you're going to be in my space, in my energy, then you have to meet me with respect and not entitlement. And you're allowed to trust the universe and still not allow people into your energy and your space. You're allowed to believe in the goodness of people and still not accept their behavior and believe them when they show you who they are and walk away if needed. You're allowed to hold space and still hold standards. The universe also isn't offended by your boundaries. You know, it doesn't delay anything if you put boundaries in place. It doesn't mean you're operating from, you know, your mind and your ego. If you put boundaries in place, you're still operating from your soul and your truth. In fact, your boundaries are the key to shifting your reality even quicker. And when it comes to your intuition speaks in the language of feeling, in the language of body wisdom, in the language of gut feelings. I had a comment from someone earlier, and Russ, if you're listening, this one's for you, but saying how he's starting to feel his gut feelings more, and that's coming online, and that just means you're aligning closer to your soul and you're fine-tuning your energy more. And that is alignment. That is you aligning closer to your soul and trusting that. And your gut feelings are essentially knowing that you know something, but not knowing why or how you know something, but you trust it. And that's how your soul speaks to you. And it speaks to you that way because it's not of the mind, so it doesn't always feel logical and you can't always articulate it. But your uneasiness around someone who is violating your energy is communication. Your discomfort is guidance. Your anger is a call to protection. All of these things are demonized, you know, anger, discomfort, all these things. They're demonized in the spiritual world because, you know, people just want to focus on the love and the light and the good feelings and, you know, soul is light and fluffy. No, your soul also has sacred rage. It can burn away all of this wounding, all of this shadow. It can burn all of that away and burn away all the people who aren't meant to have access to your energy. And this is a way that your intuition does speak to you as well, through the discomfort and through the warnings. And the universe will never ask you to sacrifice yourself. It actually wants you to protect what is sacred, which is your energy. And that's how you show the universe that you love yourself, which then makes you a match to your desires. And sometimes loving yourself, in my opinion, includes telling people to go fuck themselves and let them live their own miserable lives. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you love yourself more than allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. But one of the reasons why a lot of us have let people in like this and let people violate our boundaries, or, you know, we might just not have boundaries in the first place, it's because of something called the savior wound. And I'm not going to go too deep into the savior wound in this video. I'm going to make a separate video about how to heal it because there's a lot there. But I want to talk a little bit in this video about why certain people who carry the savior wound are more vulnerable to energetic boundary violations. And the savior wound is essentially, it's one of the most hidden and misunderstood emotional patterns, in my opinion, because to the outside world it looks like kindness, it looks like generosity, it looks like compassion, it looks like loyalty, it looks like emotional maturity, and you might even believe that that's how you're operating, but underneath all of that the energy is self-abandonment and self-rejection. We cross over from holding space for people to caretaking them, so there's a difference. And underneath the role of the caretaker is often a child who learned that their value was solely dependent on how useful they were. So a child who learned that love was something earned through service, through self-sacrifice, through stability, through emotional labor, through overgiving, when in reality love is an energy, it's the vibration of your soul, which is the truth of who you are. And you deserve to receive love just for existing, not because of what you can do for somebody. And this wound is born through upbringing, it's born through trauma or relational conditioning. But maybe you were the peacekeeper as a child, maybe you were praised for being the strong one, maybe you were the intuitive one and emotionally mature before you were even old enough to process what you were feeling. Maybe you learned that keeping everyone around you happy and abandoning yourself to make sure everyone else was happy, that's what kept you safe. Maybe you learned that if you chose yourself or you spoke up or you had boundaries, it was met with something negative that then threatened your nervous system. So you learned to just shut up and put other people's needs before your own. Maybe your safety depended on reading the room, detecting danger, or calming someone else's emotions before they exploded. The nervous system then learns, if I fix it, I'm safe. If I help, I belong. If I overgive, then I'm worthy. If I carry it, I matter and I won't be rejected or abandoned. And this is what makes us a match to energetic vampires a lot of the time. And that doesn't mean everyone who comes into your life is an energy vampire, but it does mean that the door to your energy is open to these people without you realizing. And like I said, I'm gonna post another video about the savior wound and how to heal that if this resonates, but it won't resonate with everyone. So back to this video. When someone enters our life with urgency, with spiritual language, with emotional intensity, or the implied role of, I need you, you are the one that can help me, the lack of boundaries reacts before your intuition does. So you open up, you listen, you overextend, not because you're naive, but because your body associates being needed with being valued. So your nervous system is running the show here. Or you believe that to prove your level of embodiment to the universe, you have to say yes to these people, and you think that saying no means you're a bad person or you're not evolved enough. But you're operating through your wounding without realizing, because our wounds are louder than our intuition before we've alchemized that part of our shadow. I am also putting some meditations and a new shadow course together, and that will come out in the new year if you want help alchemizing your shadow, but I'll let you all know when that's available. But the problem is that emotional obligation looks a lot like spiritual purpose when you haven't healed that wound. So you might find yourself holding space when you're depleted, saying yes when everything in you wants to say no, becoming the therapist, becoming the rescuer, becoming the regulator, the guide, feeling guilty at the thought of stepping back. And you mistake someone's demand you mistake it for your purpose, and you feel like you can't say no. And here's the truth that people avoid. Not everyone who seeks your energy arrives with respect for it. Some people do want support, some people do want connection, but a lot of people just want significance. They want direct access to your light because it highlights their shadow and what they deny in themselves. And they think that they can take your light instead of working on their own shadow. I had coaching with someone once, she really wanted coaching with me, not because she wanted coaching to work on herself and alchemize her shit, but it turned out that as soon as she saw my videos, she wanted to be friends with me because she wanted to take my light, she wanted to become me, she saw who I was, what I had, and she wanted that. But instead of working on herself, she wanted to just take it from me and like merge with me. It was really weird. And because I had the savior wound at the time and I was still clearing that, and I felt sorry for her because I could see her deep wounding and wanted to help. Hello, savior wound. I hadn't established strong enough boundaries, so she entered through that wound and then violated the fuck out of me. But the issue is, people who are trying to siphon your energy and they're violating your boundaries, they're often people who are deeply wounded. They feel so irrelevant. They've learned how to navigate their way through life through their wounding. They often have this victim mentality down to a T. So then your savior wound sees the victimhood in them, and it's a match made in heaven. And this is why it's so important to implement energetic boundaries. And protecting your boundaries is not a betrayal of your spirituality. It's the practice of it. So you can be compassionate and still be discerning. You can love someone and still step back. You can hold space without holding responsibility. You aren't a dumping ground for people's shit and trauma, contrary to what your savior wound might tell you and what a lot of toxic spiritual communities tell you. But when people come into your life and they imply that you're meant to help them, Spirit told them that you're part of their path and that they need you and all of these things, along those lines, they imply that you have to be available to them at all times. If you find that that type of person keeps entering your life, this is the first warning sign that your shadow might be activating, especially if you rush to allow them access to you. And there's a difference between helping someone and supporting someone because you care about them and love them, or like if you're offering a coaching service and there's a coach-client relationship established. There's a difference between that and completely self-abandoning and merging with someone else's story and chaos because now you suddenly feel needed, so you feel worthy, or you feel like you've got to say yes because it's spiritual. Truly supporting someone and loving them also means staying with yourself and not overgiving or self-sacrificing versus completely leaving yourself to tend to the trauma of others. Not everything wrapped in spiritual language is spiritually aligned. The universe will never, ever, ever ask you to sacrifice your well-being to prove your faith. Boundaries aren't walls, they're just standards. And the universe will never send someone who demands more than you have capacity to give. They're not sent by the universe, they're not your people. They are energy vampires because the universe doesn't need to violate you to teach you. It teaches you through resonance and recognition, not depletion and guilt. And of course we have difficult lessons to learn, but there's a difference between learning a lesson versus staying in this loop. So protecting your energy, it's not the opposite of spirituality. It's the container that keeps you safe as you grow and evolve and alchemize your shadow more and more. So let's talk about actually setting energetic boundaries. So most people don't actually struggle with knowing what their boundaries are. People know when someone's overstepping, they know when something doesn't feel good. They actually struggle with the guilt that rises the moment those boundaries are expressed. Because the guilt isn't about the boundary itself, it's about the meaning that your nervous system learned to attach to disappointing others. If love was conditional for you growing up, and I know it was for a lot of people, if peace depended on being compliant, being good, behaving well, if affection only came when you were agreeing to someone else, then of course your body interprets no as a threat to connection. And we all desire human connection and we do need that. But boundaries become difficult the moment our sense of safety becomes tied to being understood and being accepted. We think a boundary is successful if the other person approves of it, if they're on board, if they agree with it, if they thank us for it. But that's not a boundary, that's a negotiation. A boundary is not requesting someone's permission to protect your well-being. A boundary is something you set from a place of self-love that shows others what is required to stay in connection and in a relationship with you. This is very different from an ultimatum, by the way, as well. A lot of people use boundaries in a controlling way from fear. They use it as a way to get someone to change their behavior so then they can feel better. And again, that's the intention of fear, not self-love. And that's focused more on what you allow. It's focused more on trying to change the outside world to feel good, when really a boundary is focused on what you allow in and what you don't allow in into your internal world, and not making someone's issue about you. So it's not with the focus on how others treat you and telling them how to act. There's a difference there. And boundaries are very much about clarity, not confrontation. And clarity often makes people feel very uncomfortable, especially those who benefited from your lack of it. And I just want to touch a little bit more on why people are fearful of setting boundaries and feeling guilty. So the guilt you feel, it's a memory, not a message. It's your nervous system rehearsing and replaying an old outcome, one where saying no was met with conflict, withdrawal, punishment, emotional distance, being told you're difficult, selfish, dramatic, ungrateful, cold, whatever it is. Your guilt is the echo of who you had to be to survive in environments where your needs were inconvenient and not met. Boundaries don't create guilt, trauma responses do, which is why it's important we look at our shadow. So, how do you set boundaries without drowning in guilt? First, understand that a boundary is not a rejection of another person. It's a commitment to yourself. It's prioritizing you and your needs. It's setting the bar on what you know you deserve and what you'll tolerate. And that is self-love. Boundaries aren't a punishment. They don't harm the connection. Boundaries define the connection, so it has room to grow and be healthy. Also, setting boundaries will show you where people who aren't good for you are in your life, because they don't tend to react well to boundaries. Sometimes I've set boundaries with people and they lose their shit, and they try and make it their mission to take me down, and it's weird. And that's not about me, it's about them being needy and wounded, and they don't want to look at their own shit, and also entitled. So the second way you can set boundaries is detach your boundary from the outcome. You're responsible for communicating your limits with clarity. You're not responsible for someone's reaction to the fact that you have limits and have self-love. Remember what I said earlier, people who violate energetic boundaries, they often have a lack of self-love, and they feel deeply wounded and they feel irrelevant. So you setting boundaries is an extension of your self-love, and this can be triggering to people who don't hold that, but that's not for you to take on, that's not your problem. People who love you, they will adjust and respect your limits, but people who don't truly love you, they will object and probably throw a tantrum. But that's only because they can't meet you where they've not met themselves yet. If they don't love themselves, they sure as hell cannot love you, but again, that's not your problem. But the shift happens when you stop internalizing their reaction as evidence that you've done something wrong. Their disappointment is not proof of your guilt. It's proof that their expectation and their own shit is what they're looking through in that moment. So the third way is replace guilt with self-recognition. So put the focus back on you. So instead of asking, are they upset? Did they hate me? Did I hurt them? Ask, did I honor myself? Did I stay true to me? Did I communicate clearly? Did I express it in a way that feels good to me? Stop making your focus how other people feel at the expense of yourself. Your job is not to regulate how others experience your truth. Your job is to speak it authentically and hold it consistently. And finally, remember, boundaries don't push people away. They reveal who is meant to walk away, and they reveal who's meant to walk with you. Boundaries create space for the universe to remove people from your life who don't deserve a seat at the table. And remember what I said earlier, it's about co-creating with the universe, and you setting boundaries is an example of that. The relationships that are anchored in respect, reciprocity, alignment, emotional maturity, all of that, they won't see your boundary as an attack. They won't take it personally. They'll see it as an invitation to stay in your life in a way that feels good to you both. And if someone truly loves you, they want to make sure you're happy as well and you're comfortable. And that's how relationships grow and evolve. So just remember that if someone leaves you because you honored yourself, they didn't leave because of the boundary. They left because the dynamic changed and the relationship couldn't survive the upgrade, and that's okay. Not everyone's meant to stay. But when you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you stop abandoning yourself, because abandoning yourself is the complete opposite of self-love, and that's not the language of your soul or the universe. So I'm going to post next about healing the savior wound if that part resonated, so I might see you over in that video.